All right, let's take a look at what happened in the first season of the Hulu original 9 Perfect Strangers. Our story takes place at the exclusive health resort known as Tranquillum, run by the ethereal and questionably qualified Masha, who one guest describes as an amazing mystical Eastern Bloc unicorn. We are introduced to each of the 9 guests as they arrive. The grieving Marconis lost their son, Zach, when he took his own life. Napoleon is a teacher who is upbeat about their fortune of attending such an exclusive place. Heather is distant, harsh, and very concerned about their daughter, Zoe, who is Zach's twin sister. Jessica and Ben are a young, rich, influential couple experiencing marital problems. Carmel is a quiet, neurotic mother who says she is here for weight loss, esteem building, and a full mind-body transformation. Frances is a romance author who recently got scammed and her heart broken by a catfish. On her way to Tranquillum, she is told by her agent that her publisher is dropping her. Tony is an ex-athlete that struggles with drug problems and desperately wants to reconnect with his family. Lars is estranged from his partner and seems to only come to Tranquillum to write an exposé about them. We also meet Yao and Delilah, a couple who work at the resort as wellness consultants. Tony finds Frances screaming on the side of the road and tries to help, but when she rebuffs him, he calls her a tragic person. Once there, Carmel recognizes Frances and attempts to fangirl over her, but Frances is not having it. The staff take their phones and deliver specialized smoothies to the guests, claiming they are completely tailored to each guest and warns them not to share. While Heather goes for a run, Napoleon shares a strange interaction with Ben and Jessica in the hot springs. Zoe catches Lars speaking to his estranged partner on a secret device. Meanwhile, Masha is watching everything on surveillance cameras. Later, the guests all come together in a strange circular room where they meet Masha. There is concern over missing items from their bags, but Masha continues. She tells her story, how she was a high-powered businesswoman doing whatever it takes to succeed, until one fateful night when she was shot in a parking garage. She was pronounced dead, but Yao was the paramedic who saved her life. She tells of visions of a young girl on a bicycle full of joy. But Heather interrupts, seeing Zoe getting overwhelmed. Zoe runs out, and Heather confronts Masha for being insensitive. Masha takes it in stride and assures them she means to F with all of them. Frances follows Zoe, and she reveals why the family is there, saying this week would have been Zach's and is her 21st birthday. Heather interrupts and Zoe runs away. Lars explains to everyone how Masha handpicks the guests like some bizarre tragic equation. They complement each other's demons. Tony speaks with Masha about his missing medication. She calls him a drug addict and explains she was never trying to deny his medicine, simply stop him from hiding it, and gives him a pill. Masha is meditating, seeing the images of the little girl. She stops to pet her goat and then goes for a run, where she receives a threatening text message. At breakfast, Tony acts happier and gets along with everyone but Frances, who continues to take jabs at him. First item on their schedule is a bizarre activity where they dig their own graves and lie in it. They even throw dirt on them. Very morbid. And Masha asks them to imagine what they want said about them after their death. Each guest will have a private appointment with Masha during their stay. Jessica is up first, and she admits that during the grave digging, she thought about internet comments first, and that disturbed her. Through questioning, Masha gets her to admit that she's afraid to be seen for what's on the inside. Frances and Tony opt out of the optional hike and end up fighting over use of the pool. They call a truce, and Frances falls asleep floating in the water. Annoyed by her snoring, Tony throws a grape at her, and it lands in her mouth, causing her to choke. He saves her, but she figures out what happened. They are both able to laugh at the situation and spend time poolside, where she reveals to him that she was scammed. A man on the internet seduced her and then convinced her to pay money for his fictional child's medical bills. On the hike, the rest of the group bonds and participates in trust falls. Heather walks to the cliff and looks like she may want to jump. Leon attempts to talk her down, but it is Delilah who accomplishes it. While watching this, Zoe is furious. Masha is back in the surveillance room, watching as Tony lays in the grave again, Lars uses his hidden phone, and Zoe argues with her parents. She goes to Yao and Delilah and says it's time to start the protocol. Delilah says it's too early, but Masha insists. Masha begins day 3 jumping down a waterfall. When she's leaving, she receives another threatening message, this time a recording of the jump. Delilah finds her and they discuss who it could be. Delilah guessing it could be related to a previous lawsuit with the Connollys, but Masha argues that she was cleared of all negligence. At breakfast, everyone is raving about the smoothies and getting along well. Then Lars opts to be antagonistic, first pushing against Ben and Jessica, then making a snide remark to Carmel, who just snaps and leaps over the table at him. Delilah tells Masha of the incident, again voicing her concerns, but Masha brushes it off when Yao says no one was hurt. These 3 have such a strange dynamic. Today's first activity is a potato sack race, which everyone gets oddly into. Jessica is falling behind when she knots her sack and starts cartwheeling. There's an uproar over the technique, but Yao says it is allowed. Carmel is looking particularly salty about it all. Leon goes for his one-on-one with Masha. She asks about Heather, and he starts with some phony answers, but Masha gets the truth. He thinks Heather is broken. He claims he's not, but when Masha pushes him to picture Zach, he literally begs to leave. They call this day Earth Day because all they are allowed to eat is whatever they can forage. They split the genders, and the women spend the day in the river and hot springs. Carmel gets snarky with Jessica, who tells her to F off, leaving Carmel looking like this. She is not okay. Later, they open up, and Carmel admits her husband left her for a young, beautiful woman, so she tends to hate them. Also, that she sometimes snaps and doesn't remember why. Jessica opens up about her insecurities, and Heather reveals she hasn't been intimate in 3 years. Information I am sure poor Zoe had no desire to hear. The men get frustrated at the lack of foraging options. Ben corners Tony, saying he recognizes him as Smiley Hogburn, the football player. Tony is not happy to talk about his career. Lars is being antagonistic again and pushes on Ben, who reveals he won the lottery and is struggling with his life having no meaning now. As they walk, the men are getting hangry and stumble on Masha's beloved goat. Tony, Ben, and Lars agree they should eat the goat. Tony chases it while Leon tries to stop him. As the guests come back, the men are carrying the goat, and Tony presents it to Masha. She responds well, but later we see Yao console her over the loss. They have a bonfire and banquet that night. Leon steps up to make a toast and talks about Leviticus. He then tells the story that he stayed up late and pressed snooze on the alarm in the morning, feeling like if he hadn't, he may have been able to stop Zach. Then he adds it was he who killed the goat. Heather consoles him, then looks right at Masha and asks, "Have you been medicating us?" Masha admits they have been microdosing them with psilocybin, magic mushrooms. They all react poorly. Imagine not liking being drugged without consent. Shocker. They even swapped Tony's pain medication without telling him. Jessica and Ben are the only ones who haven't been dosed, which bothers her. Masha says from here on out, leave, stay, dose, no dose, it's their choice. Masha also reveals Lars is an investigative journalist and says she wants him to do an expose, claiming it may win him a Pulitzer. Yao sleeps with Masha that night, and she gets another threat. Yao then returns to Delilah, who isn't pleased, and he asks if she's the one threatening Masha. Delilah says no and makes him sleep on the couch. See? Weird dynamic. Leon isn't sure about the drugging, but Heather convinces him to be open to it, feeling better than she has in years. Jessica talks to Yao about wanting dosed. He says they've decided to give her and Ben MDMA, known as ecstasy or Molly, and she's thrilled. Carmel has her one-on-one with Masha. She tells how her husband cheated and then left her for a younger woman who everyone just loves. They touch on her violent tendencies, but she swears she may act violent but isn't a violent person. Okay. Masha has her write down terrible things her husband said to her. Zoe and Lars bond in the scream sauna. He tells her about his breakup, and she claims she wasn't that close with Zach, but Lars isn't buying it. She asks him if he's going to take Tranquillum down, and he says he hasn't decided yet. For their next activity, they meet Mr. Kendo. meant to represent those who have hurt them. Francis goes first and envisions the scammer Paul, letting him have it. Carmel goes next and begins timid, but Delilah begins reading the comment she wrote for Masha earlier, and Carmel completely loses it, going bat-poo crazy on Mr. Kendo. The violent rage disturbs many of the other guests. Tony leaves and tries to meditate, but has flashbacks. Francis finds him, and he reveals that one night at a bar, a guy was antagonizing him, and Tony punched him. The man hit his head and later passed away. Though everyone spoke on his behalf that it was unintentional and Tony didn't start it, he is racked with guilt over the man's passing. At the fire circle that night, Masha decides to increase their dosage. Yao is unsure, but Delilah is furious. Masha points out that Delilah hasn't been drinking her own smoothies to treat her bipolar disorder, and being on the protocol is a condition of her employment. Delilah backs down, but makes a thinly veiled threat in the process. Masha has a flashback of Connolly, the man who died at Tranquillum, and realizes Delilah may have been more traumatized than she thought. Zoe wakes in the night and sees Zach. He tells her to stop telling people they weren't close, because she is his legacy. Heather interrupts to check on her, and they are subjected to Leon's morning rendition of a song from Greece. At breakfast, they all talk about their strange dreams. Leon dreamt he was a beetle, but triggers Carmel when he references her wedding song, and Delilah takes her forks away. Lars shares a dream where he gave birth, and Tony was the father. Yao tells Francis she has a visitor, and she is shocked to see scammer Paul. He apologizes, says it was all real, but then he starts criticizing her books and calls her a hack. Masha hands her a sword and she starts to attack, but then wakes up. She had fallen asleep in her oatmeal. Tony helps her to her room, and they share a nice moment before she vomits. Masha apologizes to Delilah and asks what she can do. Delilah asks her to stop sleeping with Yao. Then they share a kiss. Weird dynamic continues. I mean, it's all consensual, so whatever, but it's weird. Back in the Scream sauna, Lars tells Zoe about his partner wanting a baby, but he doesn't because of his own upbringing. Zoe admits to seeing Zach and says she is happy she's not alone. Leon convinces Heather to jump off a waterfall. Ben and Jessica are connecting again. Masha receives yet another threat. Carmel is triggered yet again when she sees Ben and Jessica in the hot tub. Lars intercepts and counsels her to stop hating and disassociate from her ex. He says meeting someone new is the best way, and she is a beautiful, passionate, vibrant woman who should have no trouble finding a man. She's doubtful, but seems comforted. At her birthday party, Zoe toasts to Zach and invites her dad to sing, as is their tradition. Everyone couples up to dance, and Zoe sees Zach sitting by the pool, mouthing happy birthday to him. Masha sees this and gets excited. She hugs Zoe, saying she is the key. The guests have strange dreams again that night, Lars about his bullies, and Francis about a small singing Paul. While she flushes Paul down the toilet, Lars is awoken by Masha, who asks him to document the next day, even giving him a phone to do it. At breakfast, Masha announces they are upping the dose and must employ a buddy system for everyone's safety. Carmel asks to speak to Masha and voices concerns with her psychotropic medications, which Masha eases. Then Masha reveals she knows why Carmel is there. That in the past, Masha slept with her husband. Carmel says she wanted to come and study Masha to hopefully become her and get her husband back. Masha apologizes and says she only wants Carmel to heal, and they embrace. Francis and Tony have a moment where he talks about his renewed hope, and they share a kiss. Jessica hallucinates her nose falling off, but Ben and Masha help her through it. The Marconis are off in the woods when they each see Zach for a moment. Then Heather sees him and has a conversation where he talks about the side effects listed on his new asthma medication, which includes self-harm ideation. Heather has a complete meltdown, and the staff intervenes. Leon realizes that Heather must have read the list of side effects and now blames her for Zach's death. Zoe confronts Zach, and he says he can only tell people what they already know, just like she knows it hurts, but she'll be okay, and then he disappears. When Masha realizes that all three Marconis saw Zach, she offers to perform a ritual that may allow them to see him again. Heather is now blaming herself, saying she killed her son. Masha talks about how reality is a perspective, and in the ultimate reality, Zach can exist and they can speak with him. Lars interviews Carmel about her experience, but later she talks to Francis, who worries that Carmel is not getting better like everyone else. Delilah is scared as the ritual Masha is proposing is what killed the Connolly man. She says she doesn't want to be a part of it and urges Yao to leave with her. Finally, we see Masha meditating, and the same image of the little girl, but this time we see Masha is behind the little girl, who gets hit by a car. The next morning begins with Masha in meditation when Carmel violently attacks her. Yao pulls her off, but as they are taking her to medical, Francis sees them, and then tells the other guests. While talking to Tony, Francis has the hallucination that Tony is quoting her novel to her in full inside-out mom fantasy. Lars finds Masha and Yao with Carmel and confronts her about the guest who died. Francis interrupts to ask about Tony because she's struggling to trust in their budding relationship. Zoe attempts to talk her parents out of the ritual, but Masha brings them together and answers all of their questions, saying Zoe is vital to their success. Lars is shocked when Masha tells them she has done the ritual before with great success, saying the man was changed forever. I guess death is the biggest change there is. Francis and Tony meet in the sauna, and she says they are just too damaged to work together. Tony is hurt. Jessica and Ben decide to renew their vows. Carmel is in lockdown and given new drugs to help her stay calm. Lars confronts Masha again about lying to the Marconis. He did his research and knows about her daughter. He wonders if she's using the Marconis to connect to her. Zoe gets Masha when she sees Francis on a cliff. Masha goes to her, and they talk of Francis wanting to be the brave, confident girl she used to be when young. Masha reveals about her daughter, saying being a mother was the only time she liked who she was. Delilah has finally had enough and decides to leave, asking Yao to come with her. He's worried about the guests if they go, but Delilah decides to go to the police. When Masha won't open the gate for her, she just plows through the fence. As Carmel dances to Xanadu, Masha convinces the reluctant Marconis to do the ritual by offering to participate herself. After taking the cocktail, she goes to see Carmel, who insists she needs a real hospital. Masha disagrees, but while talking, Carmel puts in a contact, and Masha finally recognizes her as the person who shot her all those years ago. Carmel explains that she never intended to shoot Masha, just to scare her, but Masha dismissed her, and that pushed her over the edge. Masha explains that Tranquillum exists because of Carmel and says that she forgives her. Then she puts her to sleep somehow. Francis apologizes to Tony and they decide to leave. Carmel wakes up floating in an isolation chamber and discovers she's locked in. When Masha returns to the Marconis, they confront her. Lars has told them everything. Masha convinces them to continue and they meditate in a circle. Zoe suggests they wander as that's how she saw Zach before. But they all panic when they see Leon has a nosebleed. Zach appears to him to help stop it. All three family members can see him, and they ask tons of questions. Zach says they are trying to rationalize an irrational act, and it wasn't any of them, and it wasn't even him. Lars stops recording, feeling it intrusive on such a private moment. Leon begins to hear alarm noises and loses it, causing Zach to disappear. Francis and Tony run into Jessica and Ben, and they all discover their cars are missing. They hear Carmel screams for help and find her trapped. Francis and Tony go to get Masha, who is annoyed at the interruption. She tricks them into going inside and then locks them all in, telling staff member Glory, "Start the fire." Masha returns as the Marconi see Zach again, and he tells them he's sorry for hurting them and it's time to separate him from that day. He reminds them that he's not really there, and they realize it's time to say their goodbyes. The other guests smell fire and become convinced they are going to die locked in that room. They all talk about what they would do differently if given another chance. Delilah has reached the police and they are on their way. Zoe leads Masha to a clearing filled with snow and helps her finally see her daughter, Tatiana. As Masha revels in her daughter's presence, the cops raid the compound. The guests are interviewed, but all make up excuses for all the dangerous happenings. Finally, we have Francis and Tony going to dinner. Inspiration strikes and Francis begins to write. It's unclear if what is shown next is real or just Francis's writing, but we see flashes of everyone in the future. Yao and Dee are working together with a charity. Lars and Ray have welcomed a baby, and he wrote about Masha. Carmela's leading a group therapy session, and Ben and Jessica are running Tranquillum. Tony introduces Francis to his children, and the Marconis seem happy as a family again. Finally, Masha is seen driving a convertible on a coastline, Tatiana in the seat next to her. And that is where we leave Season 1 of 9 Perfect Strangers. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment with anything I missed and suggestions for other shows I should cover, and I will see you in the next video.